Single mom found $10M in her late boss's locker. What she did next shocked everyone. She opened her late boss's locker one last time. $10 million stared back at her. No one knew what she'd found inside. Her choice would change everything forever. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, have you ever found something that wasn't yours? What did you do? The fluorescent lights hummed like they always did. Carmen Reyes pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway, the wheels squeaking against polished marble. It was 11:47 p.m., and the building was silent, except for the distant hum of the HVAC system and her own breathing. She'd been cleaning these halls for 6 years. 6 years of invisible work. 6 years of scrubbing other people's messes while her own life fell apart in slow motion. Tonight felt different. Tonight, the silence pressed harder against her chest. Her supervisor had called that afternoon. Voice flat and bureaucratic. Mr. Harlan passed away. Heart attack. His office needs to be cleared before the estate people arrive tomorrow morning. I'm assigning it to you. Carmen had stopped folding laundry when she heard it. Her hands had gone still. A small pink shirt clutched between her fingers. Sophia's shirt. Her daughter had been coloring at the kitchen table, humming a song from school. "Mama? You okay?" Carmen had nodded, but her throat felt tight. Mr. Harlan was dead. The only person in that building who had ever looked her in the eye and said good evening instead of pretending she didn't exist. Now she stood outside his office, keycard in hand. The door was heavy, wooden, with his name engraved on a brass plate. She swiped the card, and the lock clicked open. The sound felt too loud, like breaking a seal. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it. Papers stacked neatly on the desk. A coffee mug with a faded university logo. A photograph in a silver frame. An older couple, smiling, standing in front of a lake. Carmen stepped inside slowly, her cart forgotten in the hallway. The air smelled faintly of cologne and old books. She'd cleaned this office 100 times, but always while he was still alive. Always while he sat at that desk, reading contracts or typing emails. He'd greet her every time, ask about Sophia. Once, he'd even helped her daughter with a math problem when Carmen brought her to work during a snow day. He was a good man, she whispered to the empty room. Her voice cracked. She pressed her palms against her eyes, willing herself not to cry. She didn't have time for grief. Grief was a luxury for people who weren't 2 months behind on rent. For people whose daughters didn't need surgery they couldn't afford. Carmen wiped her face and got to work. She emptied the trash, dusted the shelves, wiped down the desk. The estate lawyers would come in the morning, box everything up, and divide it among people who'd never met him. People who'd see dollar signs instead of the man who used to leave her $20 bills tucked under his coffee mug with notes that said for Sophia's birthday or get yourself something warm. She opened the desk drawers one by one. Pens, paper clips. A leather notebook with his initials embossed on the cover. Then, the bottom drawer. Her hand brushed against something taped to the underside. She froze. Slowly, she crouched down and looked beneath the drawer. A small silver key, held in place with clear packing tape. Next to it, a folded piece of paper. Her heart began to pound. She peeled the tape away carefully, her fingers trembling. The key was cold in her palm, heavier than it looked. She unfolded the note. The handwriting was unmistakable Mr. Harlan's neat, slanted script. For the one who sees what others don't. Locker 447. Use it wisely. Carmen read it 3 times. Her breath came faster. Locker 447. She knew the building had old storage lockers in the basement. Employees used them decades ago, back when this place was a manufacturing hub. Most were rusted shut now, forgotten. But not all of them. She looked at the key again. turning it over in her hand. Why would he leave this for her? What was in locker 447? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, snapping her back to reality. A text from her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who was watching Sophia tonight. She's asleep. Take your time. Carmen exhaled slowly. She slipped the key into her pocket and folded the note into her uniform shirt. The office was clean now, empty, ready for the lawyers. But as she turned off the light and closed the door behind her, she couldn't stop thinking about the key pressing against her ribs. And the question that burned in her mind, what did you leave me, Mr. Harlan? Carmen didn't go home that night. She told herself she would. She'd finish her shift, clock out, pick up Sophia from Mrs. Chen's apartment, and pretend everything was normal. But the key in her pocket burned like a live coal. She stood in the elevator, her finger hovering over the button for the ground floor. The lobby, the exit, home. Instead, she pressed B2, basement level 2. The elevator descended with a mechanical groan, and Carmen's reflection stared back at her from the polished steel doors, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a ponytail that had come loose hours ago. She looked tired. She looked scared. The doors opened onto a dimly lit hallway that smelled like concrete and rust. This part of the building was rarely used anymore, just storage rooms and maintenance equipment gathering dust. Carmen stepped out, her footsteps echoing. She'd been down here before, but only briefly. Once to retrieve a ladder, another time to help maintenance clear out old filing cabinets. Now, she moved slowly down the corridor, reading the numbers on the old metal lockers bolted to the wall. 421. 429. 435. Her heart pounded harder with each step. 443. 445. Then she saw it. Locker 447. It was identical to the other's dull gray metal, scratched and dented from decades of use. A small keyhole beneath a tarnished brass number plate. Carmen pulled the key from her pocket. Her hands were shaking. This is stupid, she thought. Report it. Turn it in. Let someone else deal with it. But she didn't move. She thought about Sophia's surgery, about the envelope from the hospital with the number circled in red. $18,000. About the eviction notice taped to her door last week. The one she'd peeled off before Sophia could see it. She thought about Mr. Harlan's note. For the one who sees what others don't. She slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, like it had been oiled recently. The door opened. Carmen stared. Inside the locker, stacked neatly from floor to ceiling, were vacuum-sealed plastic bags. Clear bags, filled with cash. Stacks and stacks of $100 bills. Her breath stopped. She reached out slowly, touching one of the bags. The plastic crinkled under her fingers. The money was real. She could see the watermarks, the security threads. Oh my God. Her knees went weak. She counted the bags. 12 on the left side, 12 on the right. Each one thick, heavy, packed tight. And in the center, propped against the bags like a bookmark, was a sealed white envelope. Her name was written on the front, Carmen. Not to whom it may concern, not to the finder. Her name. He knew. Her vision blurred. She grabbed the edge of the locker to steady herself, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. This isn't real. This can't be real. But it was. She pulled the envelope free with trembling fingers and tore it open. The letter inside was handwritten, 2 pages on cream-colored stationery. Mr. Harlan's neat, careful script. Carmen, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And you've done what I hoped you would, you looked. I don't have much time to explain, so I'll be brief. This money was accumulated over 30 years. It came from settlements, whistleblower cases, and corporate fraud I exposed quietly. Money I was owed but never claimed publicly. Money that should have been returned to the people it was stolen from, but the legal system buried it in red tape and bureaucracy. I kept it hidden because I knew what would happen if it surfaced. The lawyers would take it, the company would tie it up in court, and in the end, no one who actually needed it would ever see a dime. I have no family, no children, no one waiting for me when I leave this world. But you have Sophia, and you see people the way I used to, before I stopped believing in goodness. There is exactly $10 million in this locker. I'm asking you to do something most people wouldn't have the courage to do. Don't keep it for yourself. Give it to someone who needs it more than the lawyers will. Use it wisely. Use it the way I should have when I still had time. You were the only person in that building who treated me like a human being instead of a paycheck. Now I'm asking you to treat this money the same way. Robert Harlan. Carmen read the letter twice, then a third time. Her hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. $10 million. She looked back at the locker, at the rows of sealed bags, and felt the weight of the world collapse onto her shoulders. This wasn't a gift. It was a test, and she had no idea how to pass it. Carmen didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at a single vacuum-sealed bundle of cash she'd taken from the locker. $50,000. Small enough that the rest wouldn't be obviously missing. Large enough to change everything. The apartment was quiet, except for Sophia's soft breathing from the bedroom. Carmen's hands trembled as she touched the plastic. Just this once, she told herself. Just enough to survive. She'd hidden the locker key inside a coffee canister in the back of her cupboard. The rest of the money was still there, untouched, waiting. Waiting for what? For her to do the right thing? Or for someone else to find it first? By morning, she'd made her decision. She paid 2 months of back rent in cash at the building manager's office. The woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Carmen signed the receipt with shaking hands. Next, she called the hospital. "I'd like to schedule my daughter's surgery," she said, her voice steady despite the hammering in her chest. "And I'll be paying up front." The scheduler paused. "The full amount?" "Yes." Silence on the other end. Then, "Let me transfer you to our billing department." 20 minutes later it was done. Sophia's surgery was scheduled for the following month. Paid in full. Carmen hung up and pressed her forehead against the steering wheel of her car. For the first time in 3 years, she could breathe. The weight that had been crushing her chest, the constant panic, the sleepless nights calculating pennies, lifted just enough for air to get through. She thought about Sophia's face when she told her. The relief, the hope. This is what mothers do, she told herself. We survive. We protect our children. But Mr. Harlan's words echoed in her mind. Don't keep it for yourself. That evening, after her shift, Carmen went to the public library. She needed to know who Robert Harlan really was. She typed his name into the search engine, and dozens of articles appeared. Most were dry corporate announcements, promotions, retirements, industry awards. But buried beneath them, she found something else. A whistleblower case from 15 years ago. Harlan had testified against his own company, exposing fraudulent billing practices that had cost clients millions. The company settled quietly. No one went to jail. But the money, $8 million, was returned to the defrauded parties. Carmen clicked another link. A smaller article from 10 years ago. Harlan had anonymously funded a scholarship program for immigrant children. The reporter had tracked him down, but he'd refused an interview. Some things don't need credit, he'd said. They just need to be done. Carmen's throat tightened. She kept reading. More cases. More settlements. More quiet acts of integrity that no one celebrated because he never asked for recognition. He'd spent 30 years fighting corruption from the inside, and the money in that locker was the proof. And now he'd given it to her. Not as a reward, as a responsibility. Carmen closed the laptop and pressed her hands against her eyes. What have I done? The next day, she returned to work as usual. But something was different. As she pushed her cleaning cart past the executive conference room, she heard voices inside. The door was slightly ajar, and she slowed her steps. Two men in expensive suits sat at the long table, files spread between them. Harlan was meticulous, one of them said. If he had hidden assets, there's a trail. People like him always leave one. The other man leaned back in his chair. The estate inventory shows nothing unusual. Bank accounts, retirement funds, the usual. But I've seen this before. Old school types like him, they don't trust digital records. They hide things. Storage units? Safety deposit boxes? Could be. We'll search the building first. Check his office again. Basement storage. Anywhere he had access. Carmen's blood went cold. She kept walking, her heart pounding so hard she thought they might hear it through the door. They were coming. The lawyers were going to search the building. And when they found locker 447, they'd find the money, unless she moved it first. That night, Carmen stood in her kitchen, staring at the coffee canister where she'd hidden the key. Sophia was asleep. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. She thought about the $50,000 she'd already spent. The rent, the surgery. She thought about the $9,950,000 still sitting in that locker. And she thought about the lawyers, circling like vultures, ready to tear apart everything Mr. Harlan had built. Give it to someone who needs it more than the lawyers will. Carmen pulled out her phone and searched for one name. Nonprofit attorney, Seattle. She didn't know what she was going to do yet. But she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let them win. Carmen spent 3 nights reading. Articles about Mr. Harlan. Causes he'd supported quietly. Organizations he'd donated to without ever putting his name on a plaque. Children's hospitals. Immigrant scholarship funds. Homeless shelters that had closed for lack of funding. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, a notebook filling with names and addresses. Sophia was asleep in the next room, and the apartment was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. Carmen wasn't keeping the money. She'd decided that the moment she read his letter for the 4th time, but she wasn't letting the lawyers take it either. If Harlan had wanted them to have it, he would have left it in his will. Instead, he'd hidden it, protected it, and trusted her to finish what he'd started. The first donation was the hardest. Carmen withdrew $5,000 in cash from the locker small enough not to draw attention and mailed it anonymously to a scholarship fund for immigrant children. The same one Harlan had supported years ago. She didn't leave a name, no return address, just a note tucked inside the envelope. In memory of Robert Harlan, use it well. She dropped it in a mailbox 3 blocks from her apartment and walked away, her heart pounding. It felt like jumping off a cliff, but also like flying. Over the next 2 weeks, Carmen moved carefully. She donated $10,000 to a homeless shelter on the south side, $15,000 to a food bank that served the neighborhood where she grew up, another $20,000 to a children's hospital that specialized in heart surgery kids like Sophia, whose parents couldn't afford to save them. Every donation was anonymous. Every envelope was mailed from a different part of the city. She kept meticulous records in a notebook she hid beneath her mattress. Dates, amounts, organizations. She told herself she was honoring Mr. Harlan's wishes, but she also knew she was walking a tightrope. One wrong step, and everything would collapse. Then the news story broke. Carmen was getting ready for her shift when Sophia called her into the living room. Mom, look. The local news was on. A reporter stood in front of Seattle Children's Hospital, microphone in hand, smiling. Hospital officials are celebrating today after receiving a generous, anonymous donation of $25,000. The funds will go toward their cardiac surgery program, helping families who otherwise couldn't afford life-saving treatment. Carmen's breath caught. The hospital administrator appeared on screen, beaming. We're incredibly grateful to this anonymous donor. Whoever you are, thank you. You're changing lives. Sophia turned to her. That's so cool, Mom. I wish we could donate to places like that. Carmen forced a smile. Yeah, baby. Me too. But inside, her stomach twisted. She'd been so careful. But now the story was out there, and people were paying attention. The next day at work, Carmen was mopping the hallway outside the executive offices when she heard raised voices. She slowed her steps. The door to the conference room was open a crack, and she could see the two lawyers from before, plus a third man in a gray suit, holding a tablet. Another donation, the man said. Anonymous. $25,000 to Seattle Children's Hospital. That's the third large donation this month from an untraceable source. One of the lawyers leaned forward. And they're all local? Every single one. Seattle area nonprofits, food banks, shelters, immigrant services. The second lawyer tapped his pen against the table. Harlan supported those causes. It's not a coincidence. You think someone found his money? I think someone's spending it. Carmen's pulse thundered in her ears. The man with the tablet swiped the screen. We've been tracking financial activity in a 10-mile radius of this building. If the money's moving, we'll find the pattern. How long? A week, maybe less. Carmen turned and walked quickly toward the elevator, her mop bucket rattling. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely press the button. That night, she stared at the locker key on her kitchen counter. She'd moved too slowly, made too many donations too close together. And now the lawyers were hunting. Not just for the money. For her. Sophia came out of her bedroom, rubbing her eyes. Mom? Why are you still awake? Carmen turned, forcing her face into something calm. Just thinking, baby. Go back to bed. But Sophia walked over and hugged her instead. You look sad. Carmen wrapped her arms around her daughter, feeling the fragile weight of her. I'm okay. I promise. You always say that. But I know when you're worried. Carmen kissed the top of her head. You're too smart for your own good. Sophia pulled back and looked up at her. If something's wrong, you can tell me. I'm not a little kid anymore. Carmen's throat tightened. 8 years old, and already carrying more weight than any child should. I know you're not, Carmen whispered. And I'm going to make sure you never have to worry the way I do. Sophia smiled. I'm not worried. You always figure things out. Carmen held her close, her heart breaking and mending at the same time. I hope you're right, baby. I really hope you're right. The next morning, Carmen made a decision. She couldn't keep moving the money slowly, not anymore. If the lawyers were tracking financial activity, she needed to move faster. All of it. At once. And that meant she needed help. She pulled out her phone and dialed the number she'd found 2 weeks ago. A woman's voice answered. Law offices of Sarah Navarro. Carmen took a breath. Hi. My name is Carmen Reyes. I need to speak to someone about setting up a charitable foundation. Anonymously. There was a pause. Can I ask what this is regarding? Carmen looked at the locker key on the counter. I have $10 million, she said quietly. And I need to give it away before someone takes it. Carmen noticed the car on Tuesday. A black sedan parked across the street from her apartment building, tinted windows, engine idling. She told herself she was being paranoid. But on Wednesday, the same car followed her to work. And on Thursday, she saw a man in a gray jacket watching her from the corner of the parking garage. Her hands trembled as she pushed her cleaning cart through the hallways that night. They knew. Somehow, they knew. Friday morning, Sophia came into the kitchen while Carmen was making breakfast. "Mom, are you okay?" Carmen cracked an egg into the pan, not looking up. "I'm fine, baby." "You keep looking out the window." "Just tired." Sophia sat down at the table, her small face serious. "You've been acting weird for weeks. Ever since Mr. Harlan died." Carmen's hand slipped. The spatula clattered against the stove. She took a breath and turned around. "I'm just stressed about work, that's all." But Sophia's eyes didn't leave hers. "Are we in trouble?" The question hit Carmen like a fist to the chest. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and sat down across from her daughter. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "I need to tell you something." She told Sophia everything. About the locker, the money, Mr. Harlan's letter, about the donations she'd been making and the lawyers who were searching, about the man following her and the fear that had been eating her alive. Sophia listened without interrupting, her small hands folded on the table. When Carmen finished, the silence stretched between them like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, Sophia spoke. "You took some of the money." Carmen nodded, her throat aching. 50,000. For rent. For your surgery. And the rest? I'm trying to give it away. Like he asked me to." Sophia looked down at her hands. "Are we going to get in trouble?" "I don't know." "Will they take me away from you?" Carmen's voice broke. "No, baby. I won't let that happen." Sophia was quiet for a long time. Then she looked up, her eyes wet but steady. "He chose you, Mama. Out of everyone in that building, he chose you." Carmen wiped her face with the back of her hand. "I know. So you have to finish it. You have to do what he wanted. Even if it's dangerous?" Sophia reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "You always tell me to do the right thing, even when it's hard. This is the right thing." Carmen stared at her daughter, this small, fierce person who'd been forced to grow up too fast. "When did you get so wise?" she whispered. Sophia smiled, just a little. "I learned from you." If you've followed Carmen's story this far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage and difficult choices. Because what happens next will show you what real bravery looks like. That afternoon, Carmen met with Sarah Navarro. The attorney's office was small, tucked above a coffee shop in a neighborhood Carmen had never been to before. The walls were lined with bookshelves, and the desk was covered in legal files. Sarah Navarro was younger than Carmen expected, mid-30s, with sharp eyes and a calm, steady voice. "Tell me everything," she said. Carmen did. The locker, the money, Harlan's letter, the donations, the lawyers circling. When she finished, Sarah leaned back in her chair and steeped her fingers. "You're in a complicated situation," she said carefully, "but not an impossible one." "Can they arrest me?" "For what? You didn't steal the money. Harlan left it for you. He explicitly asked you to distribute it. But I took 50,000. Sarah studied her. "Did he say you couldn't?" Carmen hesitated. "No, but he said to give it to someone who needs it." "And you did. You used it to keep your daughter safe." Sarah leaned forward. "Carmen, you're not a criminal. You're a mother, trying to survive. But if we're going to protect you, we need to move fast." "How?" "We create a foundation, a legal entity in Harlan's name. We transfer the remaining funds into it, and we distribute them according to his wishes. Everything documented, everything legal." Carmen's heart pounded. "How long will that take?" 48 hours. maybe less. And the lawyers? Sarah's expression hardened. Let me worry about them. That night, Carmen returned to the basement. The black sedan was parked outside her building again, but she didn't care anymore. She opened locker 447 and began moving the money. Bag by bag, she transferred it to a duffel bag Sarah had given her. Her hands shook with every bundle. $9,950,000. She zipped the bag closed and locked the locker one last time. Then she walked out of the building, the weight of it all pressing against her shoulder. The man in the gray jacket stepped out of the shadows near the parking garage. Carmen froze. He was tall, mid-50s, with a face carved from stone. Carmen Reyes? He said quietly. Her breath stopped. Who are you? He pulled out a badge. Not police. Private investigator. My name is Michael Cross. I need you to come with me. Carmen's vision blurred. This was it. The end. But then he said something that made her knees buckle. I was hired by Robert Harlan 3 years ago to make sure his money went to the right person. Carmen stared at him. What? Michael stepped closer, his voice low. The lawyers don't know about me, and I've been protecting you since the day you opened that locker. Why didn't you say anything? Because I needed to see what you'd do. His eyes softened. And you did exactly what he hoped you would. Carmen's hands tightened on the duffel bag. So what now? Now we finish this, together. Michael Cross sat across from Carmen in Sarah Navarro's office, a manila folder open on the desk between them. Carmen's hands were still shaking from the parking garage encounter. I don't understand, she said quietly. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Michael leaned back in his chair. Because Harlan didn't want me to. He said the person who found the money had to make the choice on their own, without pressure, without guidance. He was testing me. He was trusting you. Sarah pulled a document from the folder. These are notarized instructions Harlan filed with Michael 3 years ago. They outline exactly what he wanted done with the money. Carmen stared at the papers. Harlan's signature at the bottom, witnessed and dated. He knew he was dying? She asked. Michael nodded. Heart condition. He had maybe 5 years, the doctors said. He spent that time preparing. For what? For someone like you to find it? Carmen's throat tightened. But what if I hadn't? What if someone else opened that locker? Michael's expression softened. Then the money would have stayed hidden. He gave me strict instructions if the wrong person found it, I was to intervene, reclaim it, redistribute it myself. And how did you know I was the right person? I watched you for 2 weeks after you opened the locker. Watched you struggle with the decision. Watched you take just enough to save your daughter, then try to give the rest away. He paused. Harlan believed the right person would see the money as a responsibility, not a reward. Carmen looked down at her hands. I almost kept it. But you didn't. Sarah slid another document across the desk. This protects you legally. It states that Harlan designated the funds for charitable distribution and appointed you as the executor. If anyone questions your actions, this proves you were following his explicit wishes. Will that stop the lawyers? It'll make it much harder for them to challenge anything, Sarah said. But we need to move now. Once the foundation is established and the money transferred, it's untouchable. Carmen felt the weight of it settling over her again. How long do we have? Michael's jaw tightened. The lawyers filed a motion this morning to freeze any assets connected to Harlan's estate. It goes before a judge Monday morning. That's 2 days. Exactly. They worked through the night. Sarah drafted the foundation documents while Michael coordinated with banks. Carmen sat in the corner of the office, watching them move with precision, feeling like she was watching a machine built for one purpose, protecting Harlan's final wish. At 3 a.m., Sarah looked up from her laptop. It's done. The Robert Harlan Legacy Foundation is officially registered. Carmen stood, her body aching from exhaustion. What now? Now we transfer the money. They drove to a bank that opened early for commercial clients. Michael carried the duffel bag like it weighed nothing. Inside, a manager escorted them to a private room. Carmen watched as they counted every bill. $9,950,000. When the final stack was verified, the manager looked at Carmen with something like awe. "This is extraordinary," he said quietly. Carmen's voice was steady. "It's not mine. It never was." The money was deposited into the foundation's account. Legal, protected, untouchable. Sarah handed Carmen a folder. "These are the distribution plans. We've identified 15 organizations Harlan supported during his life. The money will be divided among them over the next 6 months." Carmen opened the folder, scanning the list. Children's hospitals, immigrant scholarship funds, homeless shelters, programs for families in crisis. Her vision blurred. "He really did plan everything," she whispered. Michael nodded. Down to the last detail. Sunday morning, Carmen returned to her apartment. Sophia was waiting at the kitchen table, her small face anxious. "Did it work?" she asked. Carmen knelt down and pulled her daughter into her arms. "It worked." Sophia exhaled, her body relaxing. "So we're okay?" "We're okay." They held each other for a long time, and Carmen felt something shift inside her chest, a weight lifting that she'd carried for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to be without it. That afternoon, Sarah called. "The lawyers made their move," she said. "They filed an emergency petition to access Harlan's hidden assets." Carmen's stomach dropped. "Can they?" "No. The foundation is airtight, but they're going to come after you personally. They'll argue you misappropriated funds, manipulated a dying man. Whatever they think will stick." "What do I do?" Sarah's voice was calm. "You let me handle it. And Carmen, you did nothing wrong. Remember that." Monday morning, Carmen went to work like always. She pushed her cleaning cart through the empty hallways, her movements automatic. But when she reached the executive floor, she saw them. The 2 lawyers from before, standing outside the conference room with a woman Carmen didn't recognize. One of them noticed her and nudged the other. They started walking toward her. Carmen's pulse hammered. The woman in front was tall, sharp-featured, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She stopped a few feet away. "Carmen Reyes?" "Yes." The woman's expression was unreadable. "My name is Victoria Brennan. I was Robert Harlan's attorney for 20 years. Carmen's hands tightened on the cart handle. "I don't know anything about—" "I know what you did," Victoria said, quietly. The hallway seemed to tilt. "I know about the locker, the money, the foundation." Carmen's breath stopped. Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping. "And I want you to know I'm not here to stop you." "What?" "Harlan told me about his plan 3 years ago. He didn't tell me who he chose, but he told me what he hoped would happen." Her eyes softened. "You did exactly what he wanted." Carmen felt tears burning behind her eyes. "Then why are they—" "Because they're greedy. They see a payday slipping away." Victoria glanced back at the 2 men, who were watching from a distance. "But I have something they don't." She handed Carmen a sealed envelope. "This is a letter Harlan wrote. To be opened only if someone challenged your actions. It explains everything. His intent, his reasoning, his choice." Carmen took the envelope with trembling hands. Victoria's voice was firm. "They'll threaten you. They'll try to intimidate you. But you have the law on your side, and you have me. Why are you helping me?" Victoria's expression shifted, something raw and honest breaking through. "Because Harlan was my friend, and he spent his whole life fighting for what was right, even when it cost him everything. I won't let them dishonor that. She turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Be careful. You made powerful people look foolish. That's dangerous. Then she was gone. Carmen stood in the empty hallway, holding the envelope. Her hands had stopped shaking. For the first time since this began, she didn't feel afraid. She felt ready. The lawyers arrived Thursday morning. Carmen was mopping the lobby when she saw them through the glass doors, 3 men in dark suits, briefcases in hand, faces carved from stone. She kept her head down, pushing the mop in slow circles. They walked past her like she didn't exist. Just like always. But this time, Carmen smiled. An hour later, raised voices echoed from the executive floor. Carmen was emptying trash bins when she heard them shouting in the conference room. What do you mean it's gone? I mean, there's nothing to seize. The funds have been legally transferred to a registered nonprofit foundation. That's impossible. We filed an injunction, which was denied this morning. The judge reviewed the documentation and ruled in favor of the foundation. Silence. Then, quieter. Who authorized this? Robert Harlan, 3 years ago. Carmen kept moving down the hallway, her cartwheels squeaking. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. That afternoon, Sarah called. It's over, she said. The judge dismissed their petition. The foundation is protected. The money is untouchable. Carmen sat down on the edge of her bed, her legs suddenly weak. What happens now? Now the foundation starts its work. The first distributions go out next week. Children's Hospital gets $2 million. The Immigrant Scholarship Fund gets 1.5. We're following Harlan's plan to the letter. Carmen closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered. You did this, Carmen. Not me. You had the courage to finish what he started. After they hung up, Carmen sat in the quiet of her apartment for a long time. Sophia was at school. The building was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic. She thought about Mr. Harlan, about the man who used to leave $20 bills under his coffee mug and ask about her daughter's spelling tests. The man who'd seen her when no one else did, and trusted her with everything. Friday evening, Carmen was leaving the building when someone called her name. Miss Reyes. She turned. Victoria Brennan stood near the entrance, alone this time, her expression softer than it had been before. Can I walk with you? She asked. They walked in silence for a block, the city lights beginning to flicker on around them. Finally, Victoria spoke. I wanted to apologize. Carmen glanced at her. For what? For not stopping them sooner. For letting you go through this alone. You helped me in the end. That's what matters. Victoria stopped walking. Harlan talked about you, you know. Not by name. But he told me once that there was someone in the building who reminded him why he'd started fighting in the first place. Carmen's throat tightened. He said that. He said she was invisible to everyone else. But she saw things. Small kindnesses. Moments that mattered. He said if anyone could be trusted with what he'd built, it would be someone like that. Carmen wiped her eyes. I wish I could thank him. You did. By doing exactly what he hoped you would. Victoria reached into her bag and pulled out a business card. I know you're just a custodian, she said quietly. But you're also someone who changed the world in 2 weeks without anyone noticing. If you ever need anything legal help, advice, a job reference, call me. Carmen took the card, her fingers trembling. Thank you. Victoria's expression hardened slightly. But Carmen, be careful. You made powerful people look foolish. They'll remember that. I know. Good. Victoria's voice softened again. And for what it's worth, Harlan would have been proud of you. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the evening crowd. Carmen stood on the sidewalk, holding the business card, feeling the weight of the last 2 weeks finally lift from her shoulders. She'd done it. Against every odd, every threat, every moment of doubt, she'd finished what Harlan started. And she was still standing. That night, Carmen tucked Sophia into bed. "Mom?" Sophia said sleepily. "Are we really okay now?" Carmen smoothed her daughter's hair. "We're really okay. And Mr. Harlan's money, it's helping people? Lots of people. Kids who need surgery, like you did. Families who need homes. People who just need someone to believe in them." Sophia smiled. "He was a good man." "Yeah, baby. He was." After Sophia fell asleep, Carmen walked to the kitchen and opened the drawer where she'd hidden Harlan's letter. She read it one more time, his words blurring through her tears. "You were the only person in that building who treated me like a human being." She folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the drawer. Then she walked to the window and looked out at the city lights stretching into the distance. Somewhere out there, children were getting medical care they couldn't afford. Families were finding shelter. Students were getting scholarships that would change their lives. All because one man had believed in integrity, and one woman had chosen to honor it. Carmen pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the cool surface beneath her palm. "I hope I made you proud, Mr. Harlan," she whispered. And in the quiet of her small apartment, surrounded by everything that mattered, she finally let herself rest. 6 months later, Carmen pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway, the wheels squeaking against the marble floor. The building was quiet. The lights hummed softly overhead. Nothing had changed. And everything had. Sophia's surgery had been a success. The scar on her chest was already fading, and the doctors said her heart was stronger than it had been in years. Carmen watched her daughter run in the park, now really run, without stopping to catch her breath, and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The foundation had distributed its first round of funding. $2 million to Seattle Children's Hospital. $1.5 million to immigrant scholarship programs. Another $1 million to homeless shelters across the city. Carmen didn't attend the ceremonies or press conferences. She watched from home, Sophia curled up beside her on the couch, as news anchors talked about the anonymous legacy of Robert Harlan. They called him a hero, a philanthropist, a man who'd given everything to people who needed it most. They never mentioned the custodian who'd made it happen, and Carmen was okay with that. The letters started arriving a month after the first distribution. Anonymous thank you notes sent to the foundation's P.O. box, forwarded to Carmen by Sarah Navarro. "My daughter's medical bills are paid. I don't know who you are, but you saved her life. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Thank you for believing in me. We have a home now. A real home. Thank you." Carmen kept them all in a shoebox under her bed. On nights when the weight of the world felt too heavy, she'd read them and remember why she'd made the choice she did. One evening, after her shift, Carmen stood outside locker 447. The basement was as quiet as it had been the night she first opened it. She unlocked the door slowly. Inside, the locker was empty. No bags of cash, no letters, just hollow metal and shadows. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. A note she'd written that morning, sitting at her kitchen table while Sophia ate breakfast. She placed it inside the locker and closed the door gently. The note read, "Thank you for seeing me when no one else did. Thank you for trusting me with something bigger than myself. I hope I made you proud, Carmen." As she walked toward the elevator, she heard footsteps behind her. A young man in a custodian's uniform rounded the corner, pushing a cart identical to hers. He looked nervous, new. Carmen smiled. "First night?" He nodded. "Yeah, still learning where everything is. You'll figure it out. Just take your time." He hesitated, then asked, "Is it true what they say about this place?" "What do they say?" "That weird things happen here. That people find stuff." Carmen thought about the key taped under a desk drawer. About the locker filled with $10 million. About a man who'd believed in integrity when the world had forgotten what it meant. She looked at the young man and said quietly, "You never know what you'll find here. Keep your eyes open." He smiled uncertainly. "I will." Carmen stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she caught her reflection in the polished steel. She looked the same as she had 6 months ago. Same uniform, same tired eyes, same invisible presence. But she didn't feel the same. She felt seen. That night, Carmen tucked Sophia into bed. "Mom?" Sophia whispered. "Do you think Mr. Harlan knows what you did?" Carmen sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her daughter's hair back. "I think he does. Do you think he's proud?" Carmen's throat tightened. "I hope so, baby." Sophia smiled sleepily. "I think he is. I think he's smiling right now." Carmen kissed her forehead. "Go to sleep, sweetheart." After Sophia drifted off, Carmen walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, a child was getting surgery because of the foundation. A student was opening an acceptance letter to college. A family was sleeping in a warm bed for the first time in months. All because one man had hidden $10 million in a locker, and one woman had chosen to give it away. Carmen didn't have money now. She still worked nights, still struggled with bills, still worried about the future, but she had something more valuable than wealth. She had proof that she mattered, that her choices had weight, that integrity, even when it cost everything, was worth the price. She pressed her hand against the glass, feeling the cool surface beneath her palm. "Thank you, Mr. Harlan," she whispered into the quiet, "for seeing me." And in the reflection of the window, for just a moment, she could have sworn she saw him smiling back. Her husband hid the truth to protect her. She uncovered it to honor him. In the end, the hardest secrets to carry aren't the ones we keep. They're the ones left behind by people who believed we'd be strong enough to finish what they couldn't.